we've got the gold. In fact, 80,000 tons. Most of us are connected to the physical market. Say China has 80,000 tons. Russia, Saudi, India, 30,000 tons. So you're talking 110,000 tons of gold. Who's controlling the market now? Who's the boss?
The US may be about to take one of the biggest financial gambles in modern history, and most people haven't even noticed. Andrew Maguire says the Treasury is now floating the idea of backing its staggering $38 trillion debt with a new kind of instrument, Treasury-issued stablecoins, digital tokens pegged to the US dollar. On paper, it sounds innovative, a way to keep the debt machine running while extending Washington's reach into global finance. In reality, it's an attempt to spread America's debt burden across the world by getting foreign institutions and governments to hold these digital IOUs. But Maguire points out a fatal flaw: competition. The US might be able to pressure countries to use its digital dollar because of the dollar's dominance, but it can't stop alternatives from emerging. China has already launched its own digital yuan, and here's the key difference: it's linked directly to gold. Holders of yuan stablecoins can reportedly redeem them one-to-one for physical gold, stored in international vaults from Hong Kong to Zurich and even across parts of Africa and South America. That's a direct challenge to the US system of paper promises. If trade begins migrating toward digital currencies redeemable in actual metal, Washington's ability to print, borrow, and inflate without consequence could face its first real constraint in decades. Maguire says nations like China, Russia, India, and Saudi Arabia, sitting on an estimated 110,000 tons of gold, would gain enormous leverage. In that kind of world, faith in US debt wouldn't just weaken, it could collapse. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that actually understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
The US Treasury, and this is more than talk because it's been trial ballooned a few times now. The US Treasury may try to back its 38 trillion of debt. Now, 38 trillion, as you and I know, is only what's official. Maybe it could be 70. I don't know. But to back this 38 trillion of debt with freshly generated dollar-backed Treasury stablecoins. What are they going to do? What they're attempting to do is dump US debt on every other country. But there's a flaw in that. There's a flaw in that because, you can force people to use it because you've got the world's global currency. So you can force, and essentially because stablecoin can be issued by anybody, not just the US Treasury. So you're competing. It's suddenly you've got this debt sort of lumbered on everyone else. But the only thing is, the one thing they haven't really thought through is China says, hang on, you can actually convert a yuan stable coin, but a yuan stable coin into physical gold one-to-one. So if I'm now forced to buy my oil or whatever it might be using these stable coins and they want to dump their debt on me, I just turn around to flip it into a yuan and immediately demand that be one-to-one redeemed in gold and vaulted for me. It's not going to work. This whole plan it's simply hitting a physical wall. Basically, the yuan into gold. You can one-to-one convert, so you can buy oil or you can buy a product or sell a product or whatever it is, buy and sell a product. Whatever you end up, if you end up with yuan, you can immediately one-to-one convert that into physical gold and take physical delivery in a Western-facing SGE international vault, of which there are already two. There's Hong Kong and Singapore, and then you've got them opening up in all across Africa. You've got them opening up in Zurich, South America. So all of a sudden, this dollar dilution game is actually hitting a physical wall. And it's like China, I mean, I'm not saying the China regime is perfect or good or bad. I'm just saying these guys have worked out, we're not getting saddled with this. And you start threatening us with tariffs. You start threatening us with flip-flop tariffs. and try to control us with sanctions, as you did with Russia, etc. We've got the gold. In fact, 80,000 tons. Most of us are connected to the physical market. Say China has 80,000 tons. Russia, Saudi, India, 30,000 tons. So you're talking 110,000 tons of gold. Who's controlling the market now? Who's the boss?
Andrew Maguire shares a chilling story from a Chinese silver miner who told him that in China, people can lose everything: homes, access to healthcare, even the ability to travel just for criticizing the government online. Once your entire identity, income, and property are tied to a centralized digital system, dissent becomes dangerous. One wrong comment and you're erased from the system. Maguire says this isn't just a China problem. The same trend is quietly spreading across Western nations. People are being censored, flagged, or debanked for holding views outside the mainstream. The technology that makes life convenient, digital IDs, smart grids, online banking, can also be used to control it. When your existence depends on a system run by the state or large institutions, all it takes is one click to cut you off from everything you own. That's why Maguire argues the only real independence left is in holding tangible value. Physical gold and silver don't need permission to be used. They're not dependent on servers or politics. Silver in particular has always been the people's money, practical, divisible, and tradable anywhere. In a world moving toward digital control, owning real metal may be the last safeguard of personal freedom. Let's get back to the interview.
I think when you're talking about a social credit system here, where it's decided for you, hang on a minute, you've used all your carbon up for this year. No, so you go up to buy your airplane flight, and they say, well, it just won't go through. Why? Because they've frozen it. Or you go down and you want to buy meat. Well, no, you've eaten your share of meat already. So these things, and that's happening. I mean, and I spoke to last time in our last episode, we spoke to it's a really smart silver miner, and he said he's Chinese. And he said, you know what? In China, there are people who are homeless simply because they've tweeted something, they've said something against the government, and they're no longer able to even live in an apartment building, and they're homeless. So we know it happens, we know it's enacted, and in this country, unfortunately, we have a communist regime that has blatantly communist regime, Marxist, and that basically now, if I was to actually put a meme out against the current prime minister, and I could easily have 4 or 5 policemen at my door, not one, several at my door, for a non-hate crime, and I'd be processed, but not arrested, but just intimidated. Now, that's the first stage. That's the first stage. Once you've got a social credit system and you are reliant on it, they won't even bother. They're just literally, why doesn't my computer work? Why doesn't my lights work? And so this is where we're headed. And I think the only solution is what you're talking about. You need to have independent currency. You need to have gold and silver. It's the ultimate barter tool. It always has been a barter tool. And you may be fortunate to have a garden and you may have some chickens, and you might say, I need a trench digging. So I'll give you that chicken if you dig this trench this long. And so, yeah, that's the old barter system. But not everyone has in a position to do that. So what's the ultimate barter system? It is gold and silver, and probably silver. One thing that gives me a little bit of hope in the US is that the sound money movement is, and I connect with 2 or 3 of these guys that, and we've done interviews with them, and one thing and another. They're really good people, but it seems like under your constitution, you can actually connect. Gold is money still, technically. So really, I think several states now have either got legislation through or are seeking to get legislation through where gold is money and it can be redeemed with no taxes involved in one, which is part of the problem, of course. is that it's tax
Form
free.
of confiscation, isn't it?
So that is hopeful in a sense. Have you got any sense about how that movement, whether that movement is gaining enough traction to really sort of put a dent in this whole plan, digital ID plan, or digital central bank digital currency?
Imagine a future where money isn't held in your hand, but in a system that can decide whether you're allowed to use it. That's not science fiction, it's the quiet direction global finance is moving in. The rise of government-backed digital currencies marks a turning point where convenience and control begin to blur. A digital dollar might promise efficiency, but it also concentrates power in a way that physical cash or metal never could. Meanwhile, rivals like China are linking their digital systems to tangible reserves, using gold as both a foundation and a message real value still matters. The contrast couldn't be sharper, one system built on debt, the other anchored in substance. The implications stretch far beyond economics, they reach into personal liberty and geopolitical influence. If the world starts favoring assets that can't be printed or frozen, America's financial dominance could start to fracture from within. And as this new digital frontier takes shape, the gap between those who trust the system and those who opt out of it may define the next era of wealth and independence. So when the global shift toward programmable money becomes reality, will people choose the comfort of control or the freedom that comes with holding something real? So stay tuned. If you're into real, data-backed takes on the financial system, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the weekly updates. Thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoy the video.